Two reasons why I'm happy being here. Looks like I'm the only one, or me and Ravi are the only ones with grey hairs around. So that's good for this country. Second is, it's always a joy to meet people who are interested in this sector and seeing this as something very important. When I started my journey, I actually thought the social sector was something distinct. But I'm going to end this talk today convincing you why it should not be seen as distinct. Because human development doesn't operate in sectors. And so hopefully I'll be able to convince you or provoke you or either way. So I'm just going to walk you through a fun journey. How many of you have an economics background here? Thank God.
No one.
None of you have a major in economics, nothing?
You're scared of declaring. If you'll ask some question,
I want to walk you down. Why are we even talking about all this? Why are we talking about Samaj, Sarkar, Bazaar and all that? Nice title they have given. But why bother? Why even care a damn about all this? No, we are all here to do good, and let's just get out there and do stuff. That's how I started. I had no idea. I'm just going to spend a few minutes of my life and my journey. To cut a long story short, today I work for the government. And the reason I'll explain to you my evolution, I'm giving you all this background because you should know where I came from. When I started this organization, I was an immature 19-year-old who thought I can change the world like all of us think. At 19, we think we wave a magic wand, everything will change. Pretty much every one of us is a socialist at that age. We actually believe that we can make a difference. We actually can, but not to the extent we believe. Time and a lot of wisdom came with age, experience, with knowledge. I did go around to some of the best schools around the world. Thought they could help me teach and understand these things better, but quickly realized that the university called India as a country, as Bharat, has got far more things to teach us than anywhere else. So what I learned in all my books, my earlier books, either Citizen or Voices from the Grassroots, is an attempt to capture community wisdom, which we, in the so-called structured classrooms, start believing we have the answers and go prescriptively to rural India. And if we don't have the humility to learn from these people, we pretty much are going to end up as fools. So I just want to start my journey with a story. As an young 21, 22-year-old who was desperately wanting to get affirmation of society for the work I was doing, I was living with indigenous tribals, living like them, amongst them, but in no way really with them. There is such a distinct chasm between. I was born and brought up in Bangalore, a city with, even those days was seen as a city. And I hadn't seen a single Indian village in my life till I went to this tribal colony. So with all the wisdom of India's villages from textbooks, is what I went. We read, in those days they were saying 80% of India is in the villages when I was a student, and now we possibly say 60%. But did we ever know what that 80% was? How did it look like? I had no idea. But I went into this tribal colony. I went into this, one day to this little village, colony, not in a village. We had to walk through the forest. And around 15, 20 women with plastic pots. We call them bindges in Kannada. I don't know if you've seen these little plastic pots. The recycled plastic, they make pots and sell. And the moment they saw me, they were all sitting and talking, chatting. And the moment they saw me, they just got up and walked away. I wasn't even known to them well enough. They just knew that some guy had come from Bangalore or something like that. So I was very offended. Here I am, and I was a university ranker in medicine. I thought, oh my God, I've done so much in life. I'm going to be the next Albert Schweitzer. The Nobel Prize is just around the corner. And these guys just walk away from me. Right? It was very painful. But then I didn't leave them. I didn't let them walk away. I went and sort of dumped myself in front of them and said, where are you going? They said, we're going to go fetch water. And the river Kabini, which is on the banks of the river Kabini, was on this forest in this colony, was a clear 6 kilometers one way, which would mean by any standard to take 1 hour to reach. That means 2 hours of up and down walking if they do continuous walking. And fetching water, etc. And it's around 9:30 in the morning, they were just about to start off. So if you were in my position, and all of them women, to each one on the head and one on the hip, they would keep the pot and walk. While going, they obviously didn't have to do that. While coming back, if you were in my place as a 21-year-old, after 40 years of so-called independence, socio-economic independence, what would your immediate response be? A very simple question, right? You see these 15, 20 women walk 6 kilometers to just get 2 pots of water. What would your response be? I'm going to hold you back for 2 hours now. Come on, is it rocket science?
I think it will make you think that how insignificant and helpless we are in terms of...
Okay, very insignificant, helpless. And what would you want to do for them to make them significant and helpful? To make yourself significant and helpful? What would you want to do?
Immediately offer a solution.
What solution would you offer? You would offer them solution. You're absolutely right, but what solution would you offer?
I mean, if I'm at my level, I'll try to...
At my level, I'll try to gather people and talk to the panchayat and maybe get some resource to get the well.
Brilliant. That's exactly what I did. I went to what was then called the Jilla Panchayat. They'd just been set up in Karnataka. That's when the Panchayat Raj system was set up. And those days we would call them the chief secretaries. Now they realize that there can only be one chief secretary in a state. They call them chief executive officers. A wonderful young officer those days, and told him, you just can't allow this. And the government actually worked. Within a week we had a borewell dug, hand pump fixed, and water at their doorstep. Job accomplished. It was great. Because in medicine, I remember what my, any doctors here? Great. In P&SM they teach us, right? I don't, dental. But still some amount of P&SM, P&SD you would learn. So preventive and social medicine, we are actually, it's called community medicine nowadays. We are actually, my professor, I remember what he said. He said, all rivers have a nice way of being explained medically. In public health, we say rivers are a direct continuous channel from the aboral end of people living upstream to the oral end of people living downstream. In simple language, it just says people living downstream drink the shit of the people living upstream. And that's how the bacteria keeps continuing and the diarrhea keeps happening. So you want to stop them drinking the river water. And you didn't want women to walk 40 years after independence, 2 hours. All these are exactly my thoughts. Got a borewell drilled. I thought, wow, I must have really changed this village. It took me 4 or 5 months to go back there again. Okay. I was getting to know the people, getting to know all the tribal colonies, so it took me 4 months. And 4 months later I went, I thought people will welcome me, garlands, drums, and so, wow, great God has come, he gave us water. And luckily I didn't know the tribal dialect then. They were, by the volume of their voice, I realized they were very upset with me. They were very angry and screaming and shouting, and I said, what the hell? No gratitude in these rural tribal people. They just asked, I got water, got the government to actually work. That itself needs a Nobel Prize those days. And then these people don't want to even recognize me and offer me all the gratitude. And then after 15, 20 minutes of all this noise and sound came down, I looked at that elderly lady and said, but why are you so angry with me? Then she said, why did you get us a borewell? I said, what do you mean? You walked 2 hours, I saved you 2 hours of hard work, and I got you water at your doorstep, and you're drinking healthy water. This is going to be clean, potable water. You should be thanking me for it. She asked me one question, but did we ever tell you that we wanted water? That hit me. I said, why do you need to tell me? I'm a medicine doctor, I know. No, I've been taught that you should not be drinking this water, and I know the solution to your problem. Water is the problem. And then that lady told me something which changed my life and began my trajectory of trying to understand communities. She told me, we never saw water as a problem, you saw the problem. We never had the problem. Do you know you actually created problems for us? We are a people who till 8:39 in the morning are so busy with the domestic work, and after that the only time we get for ourselves is those 3 hours as women. You think we are fools to walk 6 kilometers one way and 6 kilometers the other way? We just don't go there to fetch 2 pots of water. You only see 2 pots of water. We see privacy We see confidentiality in our discussions. We see lives away from our husbands who would beat us otherwise. We just want to get away from this drudgery of everyday work. It's fun. We go, we talk about pregnancy, menstruation, all the problems we face as women, all the women's challenges that we don't understand, and go have a bath, wash our clothes, take 3-4 hours. The longer we spend, the better for us. And you come and give us a water on our doorstep. You know what our husbands tell us now? Why do you want to go to the river? Get it done here. You've given us 4 more hours of torture along with the water. Why the hell did you do this to us? So she was saying, we're cursing you for that. Now when we get trained in these formal programs, my nervousness and fear is we think we know our problems for India. All the problems of India we can solve. We actually understand them. But let me tell you, these are all prescriptions that urban-centric thinking provides for rural India. Most of the time they don't work. Just stopping to listen is what should be the beginning of a development practitioner's journey. If you can go with the humility saying, I don't know what the problem is. I truly don't know if I have a solution. I bring some X skill set into the room. People bring their own Y resources. The poor have a lot of resources to offer. Poor just don't offer poverty. They offer actually ideas in which they can actually negotiate their poverty. But we don't listen. We have prescriptions from government and from NGOs, schemes and programs, and I did the same mistakes and learned very painfully. Then I started asking myself, why am I actually not able to figure this out? Why is it that why did I need the government to get the borewell? If government had to be so inefficient and mediocre, how could they do it in 1 week? So is it driven by just one officer, or is it an institution driving the response? So do we even know the government? How did this government even get created? Who created the government? And that's where I want to walk you through a story. And it's a very simple story. I tell this in several places, but I want you to just think. How many of you remember you had a subject called civics in your social studies in school? I'm glad you at least remember you studied civics. So I just want you to walk through a scenario thousands of years ago. This actually happened. I'm telling it like a story. You all heard about in economics hunter-gatherer societies, where it's a particular stage in human progress. People were just hunting, eating, and then whatever they could eat, they ate. The rest they just allowed it there and moved on. And so societies had to keep moving because as animals got scarce, they had to go to the next place where more animals were there. So they never had a settled life in one place. So imagine a society in economic transition. Economic transition is not the only thing that happened at that time. From society moved from hunter-gatherer societies to agrarian societies, where you settle in one place and start doing agriculture. So imagine you're living at that point of time, all of you. That moment in history, world history, where your economic model is shifting from just running around half naked, killing animals and eating, to saying that I'm tired of running around, I'm going to settle in one place. And that is the time when socially societies were going through an enormous change. Societies are moving from anarchy and seeking order. There were no rules, regulations. You could kill when you want. You could take whatever your neighbor had. There's nothing called neighbor. There were no rules and regulations of the game. The only rule was there were no rules. So imagine a society which is moving from anarchy towards order and economically moving from one particular economic model to other. And there are only 4 people living on this earth, or at that time. You and 3 of your friends. I'll call them for want of just discovering agriculture. So 4 farmers, F1, F2, F3, F4. And farmer F, all of them have the same amount of land. Exactly the same amount of land. Farmer F1 is very strong physically. And his knowledge of agriculture is the best amongst all of them. Okay? Very simple. All of them have the same amount of land. Farmer F2, what's up? Farmer F2's got lesser strength than the F1, but his knowledge of agriculture is as much as this guy. F3 is equally strong as F1, but his knowledge of agriculture is just is lesser. F4, God in his wisdom or whatever you call it, neither gives him strength nor gives him knowledge of agriculture. And this is actually the way society evolved. So very simple question of mine is, who do you think is going to be able to produce the highest, who's going to have the highest harvest in terms of crops, if they grow the same crop? Who do you think will have it? Right? What a stupid question to ask even, correct? It's so logical, F1. So if you call P the produce, let's say he produces 5 bushels of crop. And 1 bushel of crop lasts him 3 months. So how many months can he eat now? 15 months, right? Now who would be the next highest? F2, right? So his produce will be, let's say, 4 bushels of crop, which means he can eat for 1 whole year. And who would be the next highest? Now, and this guy has nothing to eat. Now, if you look at the scenario, and for a minute, just go with me in this thought experiment. After 9 months, what is F3 going to eat? What's your name? Kamala, after you, let's say you're F3, and 9 months later, you're going to starve. And what choices do you have? What?
Go reach F1 or F2?
You'd go ask F1, please, F1, I'm starving, give me food, and he's going to give you, and it's a society in anarchy. So that option may work, but I'm F1, I don't give you. So what other option I have? And remember, we're all economic animals, driven by incentives. I want the least effort to be put in to get the maximum output. We are all the same even today, right? Even then we are no different. We are human beings after all. Cutthroat human beings who have no thought about others, who only want to survive. And so what would you do if you are that F3? What other option you have? Remember, there are 3 resources we are working with. A land resource, physical capital, the human physical capital, and intellectual capital, knowledge of agriculture. One, everybody's got differentials of this, right? And so think like that. You're a farmer F3, what would you do? Anybody else? If you're F3, what would you do? Yeah? Great. That's exactly how F3s would think, right? And whom can you steal it from? F1? Why can't you steal it from F1? He's stronger, right? He's not going to wait for you. The only person who's less stronger than you is F2. So you steal from him, and let's say you steal. Because you only steal so that you can eat, right? But what will F2 do now? If you're F2, what would you do now? You put all the hard work, and somebody steals your crop. What are you going to do?
Collaborate with F1.
Oh, but it's a society in anarchy. So can you really collaborate? Or in other words, you can ask, you can't steal from him because he's stronger. You can beg for help or ask him for help, right? And you go to him and say, please help me, F1, that fellow is stealing me. And together now they have 5S. So it's possible. The strength is collectively higher than F3. So he could possibly prevent it. But you think this fellow is so very, large-hearted, he'll say, I'll protect you? Or will he ask for something in return? And what has F2 got to give in return? Produce. And if F2 were to give away the entire 1, is it in F2's interest to even go to F1? Are you thinking along with me? He can as well allow F3 to steal it, right? It's the same, whether he gives it to F2 or gives it to F3. So how do you think, when you guys learn negotiation, I don't know if they teach you here, but we teach our students something called zone of potential agreement. It has to benefit me and you. Only that point you'll agree. So what could be the zone of potential agreement for these two? Lesser than 1 bushel, right? So let's say he gives half. Starving for 45 days is better than starving for 90 days for F2. And this guy gets half, so he says, I'll protect you. So F1 and F2 enter into a transactional relationship where I'll give you food in return for you giving me protection. Now, what just happened now? And in civics, you're all taught saying, we have 3 arms of government. right? Legislative, executive, and judiciary. What actually happened now was a new rule got created. I'll protect you if you give me food, produce. Right? That means without knowing it, we just created the legislative wing of government. We just made one rule, as society became more, and that's how you move towards order. But even despite that, F3 goes to steel. So how is F1 going to stop that? What if F1 does nothing? F3 goes to steal from F2 and F1 doesn't do anything. Will that work? So F1 should do something, right? I've taken the money from you, or I've taken the food from you. So he will say, I'll protect him, and he'll have to actually protect, which means he has to have a mechanism to protect, and that mechanism is how the executive emerged. He has to think of how to protect him. Because if he doesn't deliver, is F2 going to pay him? Unlikely, right? Now we don't think about it. This is exactly how taxation economy arose. Somebody made a rule, and to enforce the rule, we have to pay. So it's very strange. The government makes the rules, and you damn guys have to pay to follow it. We don't think about it. But it's a transaction, a social contract you enter with the system, where in return for something I pay. And this is what my I the Citizen book is all about. We have all forgotten the return part of it. Because we don't demand what we're expected to get. If F2 did not get protection from F1, would he pay? But you guys are all paying your taxes. Are you getting your money's worth? We don't know, you might be getting. Right? We never ask this question. So taxation economy actually started that way. We never think of it now. Just hold on to these thoughts. Now F3 goes and steals, or we don't know who stole, but one bushel of crop is missing. And F2 comes to F1 and says, I'm paying you for protection, I didn't get, my crop is still stolen, do something about it. And who will be the suspect? F3, right? Because he's the only one capable of stealing. F4 is out of the picture. We don't even care. We ignore the marginalized. As you all notice, we didn't even speak of F4 at all till now, right? And that's how society actually plays out. The voice is not even heard. And voices from the grassroots, which I wrote the next book about, is these voices. We never hear them. Voice poverty in our country is a bigger problem than income poverty. And we have to pay attention to those voices. How do you hear those voices? That is what you should learn when you do your immersions, when you go to the field. But then F3 is blamed. F3 says, I didn't steal it. Why are you thinking I stole it? And somebody has to prove that he stole it, and that's how the judiciary emerged. Right? So when people explain civics to you, they simply told you 3 organs of government. But they emerged out of a societal churning that happened when the economic model shifted. And the societal model shifted. And today we have inherited these organs of government without knowing why they emerged. And F4 has to be taken care of because of the next explanation I give. Just imagine there are several such F1, F2, F3, F4s. And all the F3s ganged up together. Can this F1 and F2 protect themselves? Right? You suddenly have 9S if 3 F3s come together. And 9S can easily subsume all this, right? So in whose interest it is to make sure. So what should if I'm F1, what should I do now? I have 3 F3s coming together. So what do you think, what options I would have?
Go to the other.
Wonderful. Go to the other F1s and say, let's also come together. We'll have much more strength than, we'll also have 9 strengths. And we'll get the F2 anyways on our side. So I can get all the F2s on my side. So I'll have 15 strength units, and therefore they can't get away. There's one thing, which is quite an effort, right? What's the other thing also I can do?
Just pay them. I would pay the F3.
And do what?
How much
Is it an economically incentive model to pay F3? Or is it more incentivizing to disrupt the F3s from not getting along with each other?
that's another way.
Right? That's what the British did to us. No? Such a cheap model it is. Why bother? And when I partner with many more F1s, I have to share the power with 3 other F1s. But if I make sure the F3s never get along, so easy. So if I fragment society, who gets the advantage? Right? Who actually controls most of the decisions made by government around the world, any government in the world? Everybody sitting in this room, you're all privileged F1s. Don't forget that. In some way or the other, you're F1. That is why you have taken the liberty of even thinking about the F2, F3, F4s. Let's not fool ourselves. You're not here because you're all wanting to serve this nation. You're here because at some point of time or the other, the F3s and F4s are going to wake up and demand that they be seen as part of society. And that process has already started in different ways. It's in the interest of F1 to take care of F4 even before he demands it. That's how welfare economics came in. If I keep F4 satisfied enough that he'll not trouble me, but not so empowered that he'll become me. We all attract the like. The way we sit with each other, the way we talk to each other. We have 52 languages in this room, but then people who have the same mother tongue will factionalize faster. People who come from the same geography will get together faster. People who have the same gender will get together faster. That is human beings. We all like the like. Right? We all like to be similar. We don't like to be people with dissimilar people. So F1s like F1s. F2s like F2s. There's nothing wrong. But society is in transition where we have to all look for, then what is the solution? So there is always a tension where everybody wants to be an F1. Can everybody be an F1? And that is why the model of all these jokes of sustainable development goals, we're talking about SDGs, I'm not a fan of that. Because that's a slogan. Development can never be sustainable the way we are having these models today. And that's why I always laugh. By 2030, how can you even create a sustainable model if you don't change not the development model alone, but the people conceiving the development model? And who's conceiving the development model? This narrative? The elites of the world determine what development is. As long as the communities don't determine what development is, it will never be sustainable. It's in the interest of the elites to perpetuate themselves. Whether you want it or like it or not, that is the way society has been evolving over time. And you want to disrupt it, you have to find that balance. You can find it in different ways. One opportunity is saying everybody wants to be an F1, and we are all F1s of different kinds. I might be an F1 in one particular way, in power and position today or knowledge. You might be an F1 in terms of money. Somebody might be an F1 in terms of caste or class. But we're all F1, we're all not F1s in everything. We might be F2 in something else, F3 in something else. But the fact is, if you become political F1s, whom do you ignore first? We've seen this happening in India, right? And the reality is, all the political leaders who actually say we represent their force, once they come to power, what do they become? And then they also acquire the same mentality. That is the way the world has played out. Whether it is one of the American presidents and his cabinet, the first few decisions they took, who got the highest tax benefit. If you look at all these analysis and patterns, you realize that what I'm talking is not a story. It's a reality of human development. And as long as the narrative is shaped by these forces, it will be driven by those forces. Reshifting these priorities is, how can you do this? In my opinion, it can be done by people like you. And that's why these kind of programs are so important. That's why I actually came here. Because my interest is, how do you make everybody an enlightened F1? There's no other way. Enlightened enough to understand that you cannot drive human development by yourself, but it needs to be a partnership. It cannot operate like the way I thought. I thought I can actually supplant the government when I started my NGO. And I can tell you how the development process happened. So to me, there are four major forces that shape this equilibrium. And in democracies like ours, who makes the rules for us? The F1s of the world. Who are they? The elected members, right? Let's say the parliament. So in this context, I'll say the political leaders. And whom do they claim to make these rules for? Whom do they claim to represent? The people, right? In this case. So let's call them citizens, for want of a better word. And how do they actually deliver? How do they do the execution? They need institutions to execute, right? They make rules which runs the institutions to deliver to citizens. And citizens are the ones who become the political leaders too. The tensions that arise from these four forces determines the kind of government we get. If there's an enlightened set of political leaders, they make enlightened institutions and bring rules which citizens want, and that manifests as citizens' voices. In our country, if you make them beggars, and the Prime Minister called it recently the subsidy culture, they'll only listen to what you say all the time. If you want to truly empower them, this nation has to understand empowerment has to be with dignity and self-respect, which means subsidies take away your dignity and self-respect. And which means these people should not be citizens. What I would like to call them is the authorizing environment. They authorize everything. The more you get citizens to authorize, the better the democracy is. And that's the beauty of the country today. All the problems you see today are expressions of that authorizing environment. We don't understand. We allow the West to write our narratives. I've been educated in the best of Western institutions, and I know the kind of narratives that are getting fashioned every day. You know, which other country can you have citizens protest for more than a year? A country which allows it. We don't look at that angle. We only talk about the protest. I celebrate the protest because we are allowed to protest. We can actually sit on the streets for a year and get away. I actually fasted along, I was part of Team Anna, and I write in my book the experience. 3,000 people sat with me. Which system would allow those people to block the roads and sit for 20 days, 30 days? But the state allowed it, whichever state, right? Whichever country, all that we are in. So we are actually going through an enormous evolution. People don't see it that way. An evolution where citizens' voices are getting expressed. The mechanisms are different. Somebody may go to court, somebody may sit on the streets, somebody may file PILs, but there's so much of fun evolving. We are living in a country where the Supreme Court of India hears a petition challenging the appointment of an election commissioner, not even 2 weeks old. Which country in the world even allows that? Just look at the beauty of the country we're building, and that's the country you're all a part of. Instead of taking pride in the enormous evolution of ourselves as citizens, we always frame it as something negative. For to me, that evolution is the citizens becoming the authorizing environment now. And what do we gain by it? We gain human development and progress. So I just want to end it, and then I'll stop there. So to me, what really matters is if you look at the nation today, and coming to the subject of my talk, only now I'm getting into it. Let's call it the state or government, the sarkar in my title of the talk. Who does the sarkar exist for? People, or the so-called samaj in my talk. Oh, sorry. The government says we exist for citizens, right? And who is the government? It's you and I. So we are the ones who populate the state. We are the politicians, we are the bureaucrats, we are the public servants. We populate the state. And people like me came and said, state is not delivering goods and services. They have failed. So when states fail, we civil society organizations, and unfortunately called NGOs, I hate that word. It's something like if I ask Kamala, are you a woman? She said, no, I'm not a man. That's exactly what NGOs are with the government, right? They don't know how to distinguish us, so they tell us, oh, you're not us. That means you're not us. What are we? We are civil society voices. We represent civil society. Not that we are not government. We are what we are. And so I don't like this, so I'm going to erase it. And we started believing that the government is failing. We are there to take care of citizens. We deliver goods and service. That's why I went to the forest. The state can't put up a hospital in a forest. I went and put up a hospital. State can't build a school. I went and built a school. So I thought I can supplant the state completely. But today I can tell you that is a stupid thinking. I made so many mistakes because of that. We can only supplement the state. The state is the entity which has to be existing, because that's the way society evolved. We have to learn how to hold the state accountable to deliver on the goods and service, and not to replace the state from doing its job. And that is not a good model. But then slowly, the state also learned. In the 8th plan document, It was mentioned that we have to support NGOs to do our jobs. In fact, the then Prime Minister announced and said, I will hand over a whole block to an NGO if they can do development. At that time, we celebrated. I thought, what a great Prime Minister. He's actually encouraging NGOs. But today, I think it's a sad abdication of responsibility of the state. A state which should take care of F2, F3s, F4s cannot hand it over to somebody else. So they actually made us contractors, funded us, gave us money. We lost our creativity, we lost a lot of things, and we just looked at the pipeline and become contractors to government. They cut the pipeline, what happens to us? We'll die. And so if you don't want to die, you will dance to the tunes that's given to you. So becoming from being people's voices, we became slowly state contractors. It's an evolution, I'm not saying right or wrong. And then we also got into government committees, like I am today part of government. Why did I join now and not many years ago when several positions were offered? Because I evolved and learned, and I'll come to that slowly. But then, in the 90s, our country liberalized. It went through privatization, liberalization, it broke rules, changed policies, suddenly freed up the private sector. Now, I belong to a generation where I became a doctor. I came home and told my dad, oh God, I got a degree now, I have this registration certificate. My dad felt justifiably happy. I actually misunderstood his happiness. I thought he's happy because I became a doctor, the first in the family. And you know what he told me? Finally we can get a telephone in 6 months. Because those days there was a scheme called OYT Special. OYT meant own your telephone. And OYT Special was for doctors. If they applied, normally if ordinary citizens applied, it only took 10 years to get a telephone. But if doctors applied, they got it in 6 months. So my father was actually celebrating my degree, not because he had a doctor at his call, because he would get a telephone in 6 months. And that is because my father booked a Bajaj scooter and waited 13 years for delivery. Not because India was not capable of making good scooters, but Indian law said you cannot make more scooters than what I tell you. So the state suffocated the private sector. And when they released it from all the suffocation, they started producing a lot of stuff. We keep criticizing the colas and all that of the world. But whom did they make it for? They make it because you drink it. It's a market. If the markets want it, people will produce it. If markets want rubbish, you will be fed rubbish. So it's your call whether to eat the rubbish or not, right? So they give goods and services that citizens consume because the state liberalizes. State liberalizes, we pay more taxes. If you pay more taxes, state can do more for citizens. It can do more funding for NGOs. And then the corporates realize, why should I do this? I can actually give directly to NGOs. Or some of us can start foundations and give it to people directly. This is exactly how it evolved. And there are two other players I want to talk about it today, which are shaping the narrative. One is the media. They set the development narrative. They create the aspirations. If they make you believe iPhone 14 is the best thing to have, that's what Kamala wants to buy, right? If they make you believe that watching this movie is something you can't miss, Kantara is the movie you have to see immediately, right? We all get shaped by these narratives without even knowing it. They start nudging you to behave in patterns which we think is damn good. And whether you like it or not, we're all, I won't say victims, we can also reuse it and reapply it for societal good. I have no complaints against anything. Whether it is Cambridge Analytica, which forces you to vote in a particular way after the research of understanding nudge and a particular way of thinking, or designing an algorithm which can understand how you think from the Facebook likes you put. Do you know that based on the last 20 likes of your Facebook, the algorithms can pick with 99% accuracy how we can shape your behavior and attitudes? We're living in a world which is complex today, and development is a victim of all that. And unfortunately in India, this sector has gone to sleep. Whereas in the West, they shape their narratives. They are the ones who also shape the media narratives. But in our world, because academia has got silent, development is a narrative which they're missing out. We need people like you to get into all the 6 spaces. Because I believe no one sector can solve India's problems. Every sector has got its strengths and weaknesses. All we can do is combine strengths. Build a synergistic partnership of everybody. Instead of saying you're useless, you're bad, which is what I was doing for a long time in my life. And with my experience, if I can tell you something, I think don't waste your time. Let's not build on criticizing the weakness of other sectors. Let's build on understanding what strengths are required to build. India needs everybody. We need an inclusive economy which private sector can contribute enormously to. We need this private sector to be compassionate, considerate, and conscious about its roles to governments, to everybody. I believe a fourth sector needs to emerge. If we can call the state the first sector, if we can call civil society the second sector, and the private sector the second sector, and the civil society the third sector, I think what we need is a special sector, and that is what you guys have to create. What I write in my articles as the fourth sector or the for-benefit economy, which exists for the benefit of everybody, for humanity itself. And that is this culmination of state, samaj and bazaar, where we bring out the best DNA of each sector, the public obligation of the public sector, the social consciousness of the civil society groups, and the efficiency of the private sector. Instead of criticizing it, let's look at what each one can offer to each other. Build a model which will be driven by stakeholding and not by mere shareholding. And if we can do that, that is a way forward for this world. And that's only one sector. That is the real human development sector. Human development cannot be sectorized. Economic models are sectorized. The private sector, public sector, etc. I believe people like you should occupy all spaces of human development. Whether some of you get into government, some of you get into civil society, or some of you get into media, some of you start writing development articles, some of you get into academia and shape the academic thinking, or get into corporate world and reshape the narrative to stop plundering this earth, but making it alive and vibrant. Then the 4 P's get addressed. There's no other way sustainability can come. The planet, our profits, our people, and peace can emerge. Because right now inequities are something that's too expensive a price to pay. And we've all built, by current models of development, 3 buckets of problems. The first crisis we have is an ecological crisis of unprecedented proportions. The more we consume, the more we're contributing. It's very strange. Everybody wants to build a consumerist economy. But the more you consume, the more we're destroying ourselves. So there must be a better model that we all need, and that's where we need you. We need you to think through these challenges and come out with alternatives. How many of you have more than one pair of jeans? A lot of you are wearing jeans today. More than one pair. Do you know how much of water one pair of jeans actually takes to be produced? Any idea? 8,600 liters of water it takes to produce one pair of pants. So when you buy the next jeans, ask yourself, if I'm really conscious about the planet, let me not buy it. How many of you change your frame every time you go to an ophthalmologist and get your eyes tested? I didn't say all of you, but I said how many of you? You change your lens, you change your frame also, right? It's plastic. And we don't. How many of you actually buy? Have you ever seen refills? Do you use them? When the pen is over, do you change refills or you change pens? 2 hands go up to change refills. 4, 5. But just imagine every one of us refill instead of changing the pen itself. Because a box of pen is easy to buy and use. No, put it in your drawer and keep drawing out a pen and write. We don't ask ourselves this question. But we make those individual choices. Be the enlightened F1 who makes those choices which can actually make development better. And that's the narrative this country needs, this world needs. We have to reshape all this and build in a generation of young people like you who can think of benefits that we can create for society. So to end, and after I will open it up for questions and answers, I want to promise Kamala I won't take her 15 minutes, so she is generously granted to me. That's the only name I know, so I'm only using her name. If I know somebody else's name, I'll use it. Order? Antara, is it? Antara wants the 15 minutes or doesn't want it? It's okay, she'll tolerate me. Thank you, Antara, for your generosity of tolerating me for 15 more minutes, but I don't think I need it until your questions demand me to go over that. But then let's ask ourselves this question. Do we want to be that enlightened F1 who's sensitive and compassionate, looks at stakeholders and addresses their needs with humility, with a sense of dignity, and a sense of partnership? Because collaboration is not a slogan anymore. Collaboration is the only way forward, because we can never bring solutions to the complex problems of the world by ourselves. We need everybody else. We need private sector, we need social sector, we need the public sector, we need the government. We need each one of us in this room. Just imagine a generation of young people who believe in this. If it were to arise from this very room, what a powerful impact it can create. We always believe that what can we do alone? A lot of people would ask me that. But I started out alone on my journey. It took me 39 years. But today there are 1,000 people quietly doing what they can do in SVYM, touching the lives of 3 million people in different ways. It's all possible. This country supports such activities. People immediately ask me, where did you get your money from? Close to 85% of our resources comes from within India. Today, India is going through an enormous growth phase. Exciting things are happening. In the government, do you know the 5 mandates the Prime Minister has set for us to build capacities in? That itself is a joy for me to work every day. Every morning I get up because these 5 things inspired me. The first thing is a $5 trillion inclusive economy. And his constant question is, how do you touch the last man's life? Antyodaya concept. It's not just an economy. Economic model can be created, but an inclusive economy. Second is self-reliance. Take pride in ourselves. For too long we waited for the outsiders to tell us what to do and how to lead our lives. But every one of you is a powerful potential dynamo with great creativity and ideas. Have the courage to express it. Have the confidence that your thoughts will make a difference. And we need that generation of young people. Self-reliance is not just the cloth you buy or the pens you use. That's all a very symbolic thing. But a deeper ideation that comes from young people today, that's what this country needs. A strategic vision for this country. We are talking about Amrit Kal, 25 years. That's going to be your generation's time. And you have to shape it, not allow others to shape it for you. The third is citizen-centric delivery of goods and services. The state wants to be citizen-centric. Are citizens even ready for it? It's a question I keep asking. I have fought for citizen rights, but I suddenly realized citizens are not ready. It's a myth. People want to be parasites taking. I work hard for it. What we need is to create a model of creating opportunities without any concern for caste, religion, which God you worship or which meat you eat. Those are irrelevant things. What we need is a great pride in humanity itself. And that's something which is truly citizen-centric in my opinion. Fourth is ease of living. Can we actually make our lives better? We always criticize and complain. We look at the dark clouds. I think we need to shape the narrative to look at the silver lining and keep expanding the silver lining till the cloud disappears. You and I can do it, but we need to do it together. And the last is using technology to enable existence. Today you are a world of technology people. I don't even know half the functions on my damn cell phone. And whenever I run into a problem, I go to my son. And as usual, he says, Appa, you'll never understand. And he'll do something and give it back, it works. But you are the generation. I'm sure every one of your parents go through the same thing I'm going through. Right? But can we deploy that power and knowledge within you for public good? So there's only one slogan I want to leave you with. Discover a way of ensuring private gains along with public good. Private gains can be in different ways. It can be small salaries you get to lead your existence. It could be the incomes you generate. It could be the joy you get by service. But you should all get it only because of public good. Create social enterprises. We are a country which has just launched a social stock exchange. And we need youngsters with socially powerful ideas where we want you to generate profits, but the primacy should be social intent. And you are being trained for social intent. But use your management knowledge to generate profits for the planet and for people. And those are only the solutions that are going to work. Everything else, charity is not going to work. We don't need better models of philanthropy. We need better models of social investments. And that is going to emerge. And it must come from your thinking. And if this happens, just look at the change we'll all have. I'm a very selfish guy. I'm an optimist, selfish guy. I'm going to live 20 more years, I've told myself. Because those next 20 years is going to be the time when your generation is going to make us all proud. And I want to enjoy that pride and then die. And hope you will get us there.